Hey everybody, my name is James and I'm a Renaissance guy, and what that means is I like to do a little bit of everything. And so on this channel you might find a little bit of everything. And if you enjoy what you see, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. And if you happen to find your way here because you're actually interested in the Renaissance, I also have a channel that is devoted to Shakespeare. So that's called Our Shakespeare. If you're interested in that, go ahead and check out that channel. But for now, I'm here because I want to tell you about my homemade tumbling composter that I made. And I want to tell you how I built it, I want to tell you what my next steps are with it, and I want to tell you how I messed it up so that when you build one, you can do some of the things better than I did. But just to give you a little bit of a demonstration of it before I get into the nitty-gritty, it has a door up here at the top, which is just held on with a barrel bolt. That opens up. And also, because it is a tumbling composter, it does tumble. So there you have it. That's how that thing works. So let's talk about some of the details. First, I want to talk about why I made this particular composter. So my family does have another composter. I don't know if you can see it. It's a smaller plastic one back there. The problem is I added some extra garden space to my yard, and that one back there became a little bit too small. And so my plan is to make two of these big ones. I've got this first one almost done, and I say almost because there are a couple of things for me to do with it, which I'll explain in a moment. And the other reason why I made this the way that I did it is because my family wants to try to reduce the amount of plastic that we use. Obviously, plastic is not completely avoidable, but we wanted to have a composter that was completely plastic free. And a lot of the composters of this size that I was able to find online all had some kind of plastic as a major component of their construction. And so I wanted to have one that was entirely made of wood and metal. And well, two of them, because I'm going to be building another one. And then the last reason that I made this the way that I made it is because neither my wife nor I really wanted to be right here spinning it, because there are holes in any composter for reasons that I will explain in a little bit, and neither of us really wanted to get splashed with any moisture that might be inside the composter when we spin it. We didn't want to get our hands gross and deal with any of that goo. And so I decided I wanted to have something here at my wife's request to be able to tumble this composter. And so that's the why of why it is the way it is. To summarize it, it is essentially 2x4s and 2x6s and 2x2s on here. And the actual barrel of it is simply a 55-gallon solid drum that I was able to purchase from Granger. And you might be able to save money by finding one that's used, but make sure that you get one that is not heavily corroded. So let's talk about some of the details about how this is put together and what there is left for me to do. So the main thing that's left for me to do is to put some anti-corrosion on this metal drum, because I have not had it very long, and if we look inside, we can already see a great deal of rust is starting to form in here. And so my next step is to clean it off, get rid of all of the rust, and then to put some anti-corrosion stuff on it. And so what I'm going to be using, and I don't know if this is the best thing to use or not, I've never used it before. I'm going to be using Corrosion X on the outside, but I'm not using this on the inside. The reason why is because we're going to be using this compost for growing vegetables from, and so I wanted the inside to be coated with something that is food grade. And so the food grade stuff that I decided to use is this DuPont dry film lubricant non-stick Teflon. And so because this is non-stick and dry, it is my hope that the compost will not stick to it in any way, and that the compost will be easier to slide when this thing tumbles. And because it's food grade, I feel comfortable planting my vegetables in from the barrel that had this stuff on it. So that is the reason why I chose that. So let's talk about how this thing is constructed, what I did, and what tools I used for it. The very first thing that I did, actually, and you can hear a helicopter over me right now. I apologize for that. Okay, the helicopter is further away now. The very first thing I did, actually, was to construct the holding structure for these. I guess I'll call them the legs. And the two that I've built for the next one are right here already. There's one next to the older composter, if you couldn't see that before. There's the barrel for the next one. And one thing that I will say is that these are taller than they need to be. The turning apparatus on this, or as my wife likes to call it, the pirate ship wheel, sits at somewhere between my belly button and my chest. And some people might want it a little bit lower than that. Some people might want it a little bit taller than that. But just to give you the dimensions of these and how I built them for this, this top piece here, which is where the pole goes through on both sides, is a piece of 2x6 that is cut to 1 foot 6 inches. These legs right here for it are each 4 feet long and made of 2x4s. And then I've got a piece of 2x2 down here at the bottom holding them together. And that 2x2 is 3 feet 6 inches long. And then to go from this point here outside to the outside of that one is 46 inches. So 3 feet 10 inches to get from one side to the other. So that's the dimensions of that. That one over there is identical. So the next step was to cut this hole here. And so really all I did for this door is I just marked about a 10-inch by 6-inch rectangle on this barrel with a crayon, and then I cut it out. And I used the cutout piece to be the door itself. And so the way that I cut it out, there are probably a few different ways to do it. I attempted to use a pneumatic angle grinder at first, but my air compressor was not big enough to sustain the amount of air pressure needed for that. I improvised a little bit, and I used basically this little Dremel that I used to grind out a little bit of a hole on each side. And when I grinded out that hole on each side, I could then come back and I could use my Sawzall to cut out the rest of the rectangle. And if you look closely at the rectangle, it's not the straightest line ever. And that's because I was cutting it out with a Sawzall, and that's okay. There are other ways to do this, but that's how I did it. Once I cut out the hole, I was able to put these hinges on, and I was able to add this barrel bolt. And all I had to do was drill holes in it at spots that I marked, and then use a screwdriver and crescent wrench to tighten these guys down. And then that is how this thing is held on here, and it's pretty simple. The next thing that I did is I drilled holes for my pipe, and I used the same size hole, which I used this hole saw to cut all of my holes, a 1 1/8 inch hole, and my pipe is 3/4 inch Schedule 40 black pipe that I used for that. And so this 3/4 inch pipe ends up being about an inch in total diameter, and so the 1 1/8 inch provides a little bit of room around it for these holes. So I used 1 1/8 inch holes, and I drilled holes in each end of here in the center, and I drilled a hole in the center of each end of this barrel. And what I did in order to attach the barrel to the pole that's in the middle is I used these speed rail flanges. And speed rail flanges are pretty great because they just get tightened to what you are attaching with set screws that you can use an Allen wrench for in most cases. And these ones happened to use 1/4 inch Allen wrench in order to tighten them down, but there are a range of different types of speed rail fittings. I was able to buy these from Grainger. And so I used speed rail fittings in over there, and it's screwed in to the outside with these screws here. These bolts, I should say, they're not screws, but they've got screw heads. Same thing on that side. You can kind of see the set screw in there that tightens it down. And I basically just ran this pipe through and put these flanges on in the process, and it's just sticking out of this end a little bit, just enough to go through here and go into this board fairly substantially. I cut this pipe to 43 inches. It's 43 inches long, and this 55-gallon drum, by the way, is 35 inches from outside to outside. It's got a little bit of an indentation on each side. But this pipe is 43 inches long that I cut it to, and if I was to do this again, which I am, I'm actually going to cut the next one slightly longer because if I was to do this again, I would prefer to be able to turn this leg around so that this side is facing the barrel, not this side. I ran into a problem when I first set this up, which was that this and this piece here were catching on this when I was turning it. And so I had to add these pieces of 5/4 in order to provide room for these screws to not touch this and for these to not touch this. And so that's an added step that I wouldn't need to take if I had cut this pipe to longer than 43 inches. So when I do it again, I might do 45 or 46 so that I can flip this thing around. So, so that's through there. And then on this side, I got this special speed rail fitting, which is a total cross T that I could run through here and cut these 16-inch long pieces of Schedule 40 pipe and attach them in with these set screws. And so these fittings, when they're not part of this project, look a bit like this. So this is for the next one. And then I've got these guys are the flanges. I did run into a snag with these flanges because I bought them online. I couldn't fully see them in 3 dimensions before I bought them. And a problem I had was this. The hole, this size hole, does not actually go all the way through here. The hole at the bottom end is smaller than the hole at the top end, and I needed this to run all the way through my pipe. And so what I had to do to fix that, and if I was to do this again, I would probably try to find flanges where I could run the pipe all the way through, and I just didn't think of that. What I had to do was I had to take a piece of wood, drill a hole the same size in it, line it up centered here like this, screw it in using those holes there, and then use my hole saw to drill out that portion of the hole that was needing to come off. And that was quite a process and very difficult to do, and I don't recommend that. So definitely try to find some flanges where you can run the pipe all the way through that hole. And so then I had to attach these pieces front and back in order to keep these things in place and to not spread out at all. And this guy is cut to 37.5 inches is how long this thing is. So it's 37.5 inches, and that gives it enough room in the way that I've got this set up for everything to spin and work just fine. And there's just a little bit of wiggle room on either side, and so I'm good there. That's 37.5 inches. And then once I did that, my last step, I'm sorry, not my last step, but my second to last step was to add these guys. You can see one there You can see one up top there, and then same thing on the other side over there. And what these are for, and by the way, if you're looking for these in the hardware store, they're just double wide corner braces from Home Depot. And what those are for is so that when you're tumbling the compost is catching on those and is actually tumbling. And if you didn't have anything there, then the compost would just potentially just sit there at the bottom and wouldn't actually spin. And I won't know until I start using this whether I'm going to need more than those 3 in order for this to be fully functional. You know, I'll find out. It's a work in progress. And then the last thing is I drilled holes. These are 1/4-inch holes. I drilled some holes in the ends, and I drilled some holes throughout the barrel here, and that is for both airflow and so that moisture doesn't build up too much in that barrel, so it's got room to breathe. And so now all that's left is for me to finish, cleaning it up and sealing it. Also, when I clean it up, I'm going to get all of these stickers off just so that that Corrosion X can adhere to the metal and not to the sticker. But all that's left is for me to deal with the corrosion and then to start using it. And hopefully that'll work well. So that's how I built this homemade tumbling composter, plastic free. If you have any questions, anything that was unclear, didn't make sense to you, you need some more information about, or you just want to know later on how this thing is holding up down the road, leave a comment, let me know. I'll be happy to respond as quickly as I possibly can. So thanks for watching. Have a great day.